Hey Foilers, we hope you enjoy an extended preview of this HD Foilers only episode. If you want to hear the whole episode, help support the show and become an HD member. Just head over to our website, thetfhc.com, and click on members to see what membership plans we have available. Your financial support means the world to us and helps us keep the show up and running, pay our bills, and provide you the best content possible. Most of all, your financial support helps us reach the lost for God. As always, thanks so much for all the love and support. And now, on to the preview.
When we look at the days of Noah, and also understand that that's an overarching sign for the end time, that it's going to be like the days of Noah. This is suggesting that if they were tampering with the DNA, they had a technology that we're just catching up to now.
Yeah.
And so in the book of Enoch, First Enoch and other books of Enoch, we get descriptions of them playing and creating chimera type beings and all sorts of different kinds of creatures. But can we get there sort of biblically to substantiate it? And I would say, yes, we can. My approach, for people who aren't familiar with me, I like to measure everything against what's written in the Bible. So
Amen. Yes,
I'll look at everything that is outside the Bible, but if it's not following the direction of what's in the Bible, then I look at it as interesting, but I don't necessarily want to use it. So I like to try and get back to the Bible with it. So the world before the flood, and understand that the giants are created in verses 1-4 in the preamble to the flood story. So it's the context for the flood story. They're the ones that are going to bring the violence, and they're going to bring the corruption. And so that word corrupt is interesting because everything on the earth is corrupted and all flesh is corrupted on a sort of a general basis. And so that word corrupt is the Hebrew word shakath. And it's an interesting word because it means to pervert, to ruin, to decay, to pollute, and or to destroy. So they were kind of doing all of that with their corruption and their violence, right? And so if they could corrupt the flesh, that means they could corrupt the DNA, not just with physical sort of sexual relations, but with all the other animals that are corrupted. And so it implies that they could also change all the plant genomes as well. And one of the beings that they created before the flood is a name that everybody might be familiar with. And I'll come back to another one from a scientific perspective, but from a biblical perspective, we get this strange mythos that comes down through our history that's unexplained, that there were these single-horned, cuddly little unicorns that were so playful and innocent they didn't hear the calling to come to the ark. Well, two things on this. One is only the animals that were pure were called to the ark. So that means these unicorns, they just didn't miss the calling, because you wouldn't miss. I mean, it's like be a command, right? They're going to
like,
come.
oops, God's like, oops, I forgot one.
So what is a unicorn? Well, it's not a wild bull as it's translated in the KJV from the Hebrew word ram. It is actually a horse-like creature, but it's a chimera type of creature. It has all sorts of different other aspects to it. Like King Hababa of the Cedar Forest is a chimera type of individual. So this was the ideal giant horse that has the feet of a bird, and serpent looks to it on its tail, and a whole bunch of other things going on, and a giant horn that could kill mastodon with one gore. It was that big and powerful to carry these giants. And you had the same thing going on after the flood in a smaller way. I think it's the Lipizan horses that come out of Austria that are a little bit larger and more majestic. That's the strain that was either manipulated with or genealogically made for the original giants after the flood, who are smaller. So still giant horses, but something a little bit different. And those are the horses of the royales, of course. And if you look at whether or not it's the Persian king who has these horses that are carrying his chariot, those are the Lupizan type of horses that are giant horses, just as he's depicted as a giant in a lot of the movies that are being more recently made about him. When we look at Darius is the one or Darius that I'm referring to here. And like with Julius Caesar, he had a black and a white horse. Alexander had horse. This has got that sort of history that's built in their traditions in terms of what they're doing. So the ones before the flood, they were a chimera type of being that was the ideal scientifically and sexually somehow created beings, because they have a life force that's passed into them to make them live. Because as we look at doing chimera today, they can't get it to live longer than 30 days because it doesn't have a spirit, right? You're gonna have to have a spirit from heaven or a counterfeit spirit from the fallen angels to make that quickening sort of happen and keep it animated in life. So that unicorn is part of the mythos of the occult royales, and it's got nothing to do with those little playful things. And so when we see unicorn translated in the KJV Bible, it's associated with Mount Hermon, and it's associated with things that would promote an antichrist type figure. If you were looking to do that, where you look at the applications of the passages. So it should have been translated as wild bull, but in the KJV Bible of the mighty Prince James, a royale, mighty as in Gibbor or Gibborim.
Yeah, exactly.
It's rather suspicious, but I think they're trying to create a dynastic bloodline for setting up the Commonwealth and an Antichrist type bloodline from that lineage. So I can see why they're doing it. So there's a technology there, and they could create that chimera type being. And there's lots of chimera type beings that they created before the flood, which again suggests some sort of DNA manipulation. So when we look at what do they call the science that they use to do DNA manipulation today, it's the Chimera projects, right?